Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show on Our Game. Myself, Shane Stapleton, Michael Verney as ever, brought to you by orgaretro.com. I've got this sweet little Galway jersey on here. She's sweet as a nut there, Joy.
Absolute peach, isn't it now?
Yeah.
Fairness. It's hard bait. I love all the old sponsors as well. Like you had Shaw's last week, you have Tommy Varden this week. Like they're iconic. It's like the Tipperary Finches jersey as well. It's just you remember the sponsorship on these kind of classic jerseys. Like the Carol Meets Offaly one from the 90s as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this one's an absolute beauty. If you're into Galway now, obviously I wouldn't be.
Well, yeah,
Galway,
you're definitely not. You're definitely not into Galway.
But I would say if you want to get 15% off this, use the promo code OurGame, go to orgaretro.com and give them a follow there too. Michael Verney, it was a weekend of shocks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Starting in Galway now, seeing as we're talking about Galway.
Yeah, definitely. Turlough being beaten was definitely one of the bigger shocks of the weekend. I just couldn't see that. Kilnadima haven't done anything at senior level in recent years that would suggest that sort of a shock. And I know there's been a couple of injuries on the Turlough side, and obviously Dottie Burke was sent off as well. But you wouldn't have seen that coming. Kind of got me thinking about other big shocks maybe that we've seen down through the years. Club never seems to fail on that front. Like 6 Mile Bridge been beaten at the weekend. Fair enough. It was probably closer after only beating Airog last year by a point. It was probably closer maybe than many would have thought maybe from the outside, but I wouldn't have predicted the nature of that defeat as well. And then looking back down through history, and I've mentioned him a couple of times in the show recently, probably Kilcormac Connolly beating Turlough Sarsfields in the All-Ireland Club semi-final would definitely be one that would spring to mind on a localized front as well. Unfortunately, my own borough getting beaten, going for 5 in a row by Tullamore in the semi-final would have been seen as a big shock too. But every year there's teams can kind of sleepwalk into a quarter-final, semi-final, and someone is just waiting there, and you're out, and it's a miserable winter. And 6 Mile Bridge and Turlough will definitely not be having happy winters this year anyway.
Yeah, I'd say when Oulart the Bala were beaten by Mount Leinster Rangers back in was it 2012? I think it was 2012. No, maybe it was 2013. That not too many people saw that one coming. Raharney when they beat Ballyboden that time. There's been plenty of shocks over the years. Actually, if any people out there think that there's going to be a shock county title winner this year, let us know.
Yeah, say it now and don't give a hindsight. Tell us now.
And the other thing is, we were going to do the club power rankings today, but there's so much to talk about from the weekend. We thought it'd be rushed today, so we have a few days to think about it going into Thursday. I think Thursday makes more sense to do it. And if people out there are frustrated, sorry, but just there was so much at the weekend. Haven't really had time to sit down and figure out who on earth will be in the top 10 in the club power rankings at the moment.
Well, unless people want us to be here till about 4 o'clock, I'd say maybe we probably should leave it till Thursday because there's so much to digest over the weekend. Just massive results everywhere, massive performances everywhere. And we'll get to it later on in the show. A particularly unique goal of the week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just a couple of comments in here. Flash, good morning, lads. Won't be able to watch live today. So just wanted to pop in and say, hope the show goes well. Thanks for all the brilliant GA coverage you're providing weekly, and you're the best at it. Much appreciated.
Well, isn't that some commitment now? He's not going to watch the show, but he logged on to say hello and he's going to watch later. Now that's top class, Flash. I have to say.
Top class, yeah. Red Lad says Dublin Championship is extremely close this year. 2 of the 4 quarterfinals over the weekends went to extra time, and there was serious drama. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Jack Emeraldo, LM for Sam 2022. Ballier beating Turlough Sarsfields. Yeah, that was definitely seen as a bit of a shock at that stage. That was Adrian McGrath, Clareman saying that. ML89, senior B teams won both their games against 2 of the top senior A teams. This is Galway. Clarenbridge beating Loughrea and Kilnadima beating Turlough. Portumna went 10 points up against Gort and lost by a point. Without Joe Canning, it must be added.
Yeah, that's fair going now. And I suppose, listen, Joe had said it earlier on in the year that being relegated to Senior B wasn't like the slight or the drop that many people would suggest. So I suppose maybe the result over the weekend and even Portumna just going down by a point would maybe suggest that too, in fairness.
Yeah, plenty to get through in the show, and we'll just jump back onto Galway in a second. But a reminder, please do subscribe to the channel. Absolutely free to do it. Press the button in the bottom right-hand corner if you're watching on YouTube. Follow all the social channels. And if you want the audio podcast, again, this is brilliant. If you were taking a bath, going for a walk, whatever you're doing, $5 a month, you get all the audio podcasts. Only place you can do it. And again, a great way to support the channel.
Taking a bath. Do people still do that? Yeah, I to be fair, I do it from time to time, but it's usually some sort of an ice bath where I'm looking for some sort of a remedy to try and fix my ailing body. But do people still take baths? They do.
It's fair nice. Throw in a sup of Epsom salts there and you're laughing. And do you know
The
what
only-
I would have done one time is I'd have the old laptop set up sitting on the pot and you have an old Netflix show going as you're kicking back there, towel behind the back of the head. Ideal way to spend a half hour.
The only worry would be that the laptop could overheat, particularly if there's an awful lot of heat in the bath. Like our bathroom here at home, the place would be.
Do you ever hear of ventilation?
Yeah, no, but if you want to keep the heat in and really, get at your body and relax those muscles, you want to keep the heat in. Then your laptop overheats and explodes the next time. Also, worrying the fact that you're just bringing your laptop into Crow Park and all these places, and it's sitting on toilets in other places.
Don't worry, I wipe it down. I'd say I do. Hey, do you know what? Actually, before we get on to G8, there was just a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend that was pretty noteworthy. Mark Allen winning the Northern Ireland Open in snooker. That was very entertaining. Final frame decider, hard to beat that. There was Rory McIlroy winning, so well done to him. We talked about some of the shocks. Carnacon, their run of, was it 21 in a row in Mayo?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and you thought it was a little bit, there wasn't too much love going on at the end of the game.
Well, saying that, like, it's a county final, so like Knockmore totally entitled to celebrate. But I just saw some of the clips. I think it was Cormac O'Malley put out a clip, and I just thought it was noticeable how nobody was going to the Carnacon players. That was the first thing I noticed, because obviously they've been the dominant force in a county. And a lot of the time, in order to take down that type of a dynasty, there has to probably be a lot of, I would say, and I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm just saying there has to be a lot of bitterness built up in order to generate the motivation and the effort that's needed to take down a big power like this. So like imagine the. I'm sure there's a lot of respect, but imagine the disdain that's towards the Balnacorty ladies in Waterford, who are going for, it's in the high 30s, I think, at this stage in a row. So while it's great, and we're like, geez, that's a phenomenal achievement, I'm sure there's other clubs in the county that are just pulling their hair out and would do anything to stop them.
Well, the comments keep flying in here. Not hurling related, but Douglas dumped Nemo out of the Cork Senior Football Championship. That was a big one.
My immediate thing on that, Shane, was wondering, Are Douglas's run for a hurling title is going to get harder as a result of this? That was the immediate thought that came into my head, because they are going to be playing week on week. And well, saying we're going to go into it in a while. Knockmore are playing week on week, Knockmore, Castellini in football and hurling, and doesn't seem to be doing them any harm. But it is a difficult thing to, like Shane Kingston, the Cadigans, all these lads are going to have to be playing both codes week on week.
Aren't Douglas the biggest club in Munster now?
Oh,
I think I saw something recently that the numbers-wise they're the biggest club in terms of like membership. I mean, you'd see plenty of clubs in Dublin that have memberships that are comparable, but they're very, very big clubs. So you're waiting for them to kind of kick on. Nameless King says, any remedy for a monumental hangover? I feel 73 years old today, lads. I know what. Well, look, I haven't drank in the past couple of weeks, and I feel brand new shampoo after it. So I have to say, kick the drink for a little while and go out and play a bit of soccer, a bit of golf, a bit of tennis, bit of go for a few pucks, whatever it takes. But it's getting out there and exercising.
I've never known the feeling of a hangover. Before I die, I probably do want to know how miserable it is. But anyone who I've said that to, they just said, no, you don't want to know. You're doing the right thing. Just plow on. And I think the older you get, from what I can gather, anyway, chatting my mates, who most of them would enjoy a few pints, the worse it gets. The older you get. It
doesn't get better. Yeah, it doesn't get better.
It's like it's the exact same as an older player trying to recover from matches. It takes 4 or 5 days, whereas you would have played a game the next day when you're in your 20s. When you go to beer out for a Saturday night, you're probably not recovered till the Wednesday or Thursday the week after, and you're absolutely hanging for a couple of days. You're just literally like willing time away and just hoping for the next day and hoping you'll get there.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you get better, you get more experience with these things over the years. Now, when you're in the right frame of mind after a night out, sometimes you'll combine a bit of Diorolite with a glass of water before you go to bed, and you're hopping off the sod the next morning. That can work. Obviously, just drinking water in general helps. The worst I ever had was, you're talking about being in your 20s and playing a match the next day. Playing a soccer match for Burris League, who knows, maybe 15 years ago or something like that. Don't remember getting to bed, was in ribbons, woke up the next day, shambled onto the pitch. And I think I gave away about 3 fouls in the first 15 minutes just by bumping into lads. I was all over the place. And at half time, or no, sort of midway through the first half, I had to stick my fingers down my throat at the sideline as play was going on around me. And early in the second half, I passed the ball forward and I was like, I don't want it back, because the player was looking to give it back to me. And I just went, no. And then I said, okay, and he hit it to me, and I just kicked it to their goalie and just turned around and said, take me off.
The only 2 points I'll make on that is, number one is, like, if you're in enough of a cognizant state to take a Dior your night probably hasn't been as good as you wanted it to be. Would that be fair to say? If you know what I mean, that you have the wits about you to actually go and plan for the next day. The really good nights, you don't plan. You just eat 7 iceburgers and go to bed. And the other one I'd say is, I think playing soccer maybe to a lesser extent, but you could definitely go to the gym with a good feed of pints in the night before. I'd say you could play a soccer match. You could not play a hurling match if you were, like, literally dying. Like, I just don't think it's physically possible, because there's too many things going on. The ball is so small, the movements are so kind of fine, and the skills are so nuanced, I suppose, as well. But I think you could play soccer and hoof the ball up the pitch after a feed of pints the night before, but I'm not sure if you could play hurling.
You wouldn't want to be headering one of those junior soccer balls, so I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
We'll run through a few more of the comments. Go to the week, JJ Delaney. We will talk about him. I got caught with one of these comments last week, and it got shared around on social media. Hey, these things happen.
At least you brought it up. I wasn't sure if you were going to bring it up, so I was going to mention it at some stage. But fair play to. We actually don't know. We just don't know who actually put in the comment that caught you. We're not sure of the identity of that person. So if they want to come forward, I'd say there might be a prize for them, I'd say. Definitely from my end, anyway.
Yeah, John O'Sullivan, Kingston and the Cadigans don't play football, and this is added by Pure Hatchet. Yeah, they aren't playing it this year. They have only a few that are playing June. Sean O'Sullivan says Ballymacarbery going for 40 ladies football county titles this year. Surely a record. There are also years where they just swapped jerseys and played as Waterford as well. Interesting. Former Waterford manager Scully Ryan has a great book. His wife and 2 daughters lining out at one stage. Well, I'm lying down with a bag of Starburst at the moment, so I'm doing the opposite of what you suggested. Great show as always, his nameless king. So he's getting through it his own way. Nisha Waldron can't bait an ice cold can of Coke and a packet of salt and vinegar crisps for a hangover cure. Don't agree. I mean, I'm not a salt and vinegar man in the first place. It's cheese and onion or nothing. I'd say, do you know what I often do? You know the way a burst of cold stands to you? Well, obviously you don't know. But a lot of lads, you know, if you've, let's say, won a big hurling match or a football match, the next day you might do a recovery session in the sea if you happen to be near the coast.
Yeah.
And that sort of bursts the hangover out of you a little bit. I think the shock of cold helps. Well, another thing that I find helps is the odd time I get an ice cream if I've got a hangover. Maybe something like a Calippo or something with a bit of deep cold to it. And I find actually a Twister ice cream, you know those?
Tangle Twister, yeah.
They're fair twirled around by. I find them great now to actually knock the hangover out of you.
An ice cream. They should have that on the packaging, in fairness.
Yeah. I couldn't play a soccer match on the PlayStation at the moment, but I'll get up and about tomorrow as his name is King. Fair play to you. A rule to live by: beer before liquor, never sicker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. It sounds like something Homer Simpson might say. Jesus Saint, that jersey is a work of art. Yeah. OrgaRetro.com, promo
very
code
nice.
OurGame for 15 off. That was me, says Sean O'Sullivan, who obviously caught me with the comments. Sorry, I couldn't resist, but if Brendan doesn't release that site or someone else will. You're some devil, Sean. You got me badly, and it's all over WhatsApp. But hey, there's no such thing as bad advertising, is there?
No, in fairness, there was lads, all sorts of people sending that on to me, and it was in all sorts of different WhatsApp groups. It's one
my mother shared it into my family WhatsApp.
Yeah, no, I love that now, in fairness. I love that, yeah. That's where the sneering should start, and that's where it should end, at home.
Yeah. Sean, you definitely got your money's worth on that one. Declan O'Keefe, Leonard Enright, RIP, used to play fullback for Limerick after having a few pints against Cork in a Munster final. The Cork full forward was wondering where the smell of alcohol was coming from. He was a fair old player, Leonard, to be fair.
No, I think Leonard was a brilliant player. Me and you were more talking about, having 15 pints and trying to hurl the next day, which is a different story altogether, I'm sure.
And lads, it was super to see John Troy get the love last episode. He is rarely mentioned on the RT circuit. You boys are doing a great service. Appreciate that, EH. And do you know what? There's an American footballer, Russell Wilson. He didn't play last night for Seattle against the Pittsburgh Steelers in their loss. He smashed his finger last week, but he came out on the pitch beforehand. He's one of these guys who I feel is just a bit of a shaper and always wants to be seen to saying the right thing. He's always talking about... He basically sounds like, the way Katie Taylor after a fight, she talks about, Lord, Lord our God and all that kind of crack. This lad's at that all the time as well. But I feel it's very premeditated from his point of view. I've no doubt, but he believes in all that kind of stuff, definitely. But it seems a bit premeditated, and he says a lot for the media and does a lot of posturing for the media. So when before the match that he wasn't playing last night, his hand is bandaged up, he goes and does this. I think a lot of this is shaping. And I wonder what you make of Russell Wilson doing this. So this is before the match. He's going through it as if he's about to be playing. There he's acting like he got a first down. We'll move forward.
He went through again.
Did you ever see the bit of it? Would you
No.
be as cynical as I would over that?
I don't know him I don't know him or know his media engagements maybe as well as you do. But if that was in a GA context, he'd be absolutely cut to ribbons. Just like, what
with the
is
cameras
that?
in his face and
Yeah.
he keeps doing it. Like let's say, imagine. All right, name a brilliant free taker.
Joe Canning.
So let's say Joe Canning's injured for a match, and beforehand he goes out and he's Maria taking a few frees and talking to himself, and there's a camera right up in his face, and he keeps doing it. I mean, any Irish person is going to say, "Oh God, I'm not going to get recorded doing this. I'm going to look like a fool here." But this guy keeps going. He's hamming it up for the cameras.
It's almost like, do you ever see, Big Ernie McCracken in Kingpin? And he's like, he needs a strike, and he's like, one more time, sweetness. Except this is all on camera, and it does look like he's looking for attention somewhat. It seems a bit ridiculous. Other people might say, look at how professional he is. He's injured, but he's still going through all the routines that he would normally go through, and he'll be ready quicker when he comes back. But I probably would lean on the same side of the fence as you in that one, I'd say.
As does Nisha. That Wilson stuff is so cat, and what's worse is the clowns praising him. Patrick Hickey, media contracts. The NFL are gassed. They do a celebratory dance for everything, says Nameless King. In general, I enjoy the crack.
I kind of like that too, yeah.
But that stuff now, I just find it a bit cringe and premeditated. Anyway, we'll jump back to hurling here. Galway Senior Hurling Championship preliminary quarterfinals. We already mentioned Kilnadeem and Leitrim beating Turlough more 217 to 117. Turlough were up by 10 at one stage. As you mentioned, red card for Dahi Burke. I think his second one was a bit of a reckless tackle on Colin Malloy, and Malloy was brilliant in this game. I think he was one of the main men, and a goal by Dylan Tawalawi was crucial in this game. And Colin Malloy was the 2020 minor hurler of the year. He tore Turlough apart with 4 from play here. That is a huge victory there, isn't it?
Massive victory, yeah. I'm presuming that Brian Malloy was playing as well, who was on the Galway panel. He would have been Kilnadeem Leitrim star man there for a good while. Again, quite an impish kind of small kind of player, but forward, but really, really lively and really good in front of the post. Was on the Galway panel for a couple of years. But like Turlough were well in control here. It's funny how the wheels can come off. Dottie getting sent off, and then everything just kind of seemed to turn against them. It's a fair achievement for Colin Malloy, who was only minor hurler of the year last year. Like he could still well be 17 to do damage against a real seasoned senior team like Turlough here. Fair play to him. He's obviously a very, very good prospect. I've only seen glimpses of him at minor level. Dylan Tawalawi, that you mentioned, is an interesting one. He's UK born and of Nigerian descent, but I just read an article in the Connacht Tribune about him that he's absolutely Galway to the core. He's obviously he's played minor for Galway in recent years as well. So they obviously have plenty of players coming, but couldn't have seen this coming. I know how seasoned Turlough are, how difficult they make themselves to be broken down, and just didn't see this one coming now, I have to say.
Yeah, and we're seeing players of different ethnicities playing more and more, which is obviously great. That's what you want to see. The odd time you nearly struggle with a name, so obviously I don't think anyone would think too ill of you. But like, there's a wing forward for the Tipperary Miners this year, and again, we might struggle to pronounce it correctly, Tauri Shayuanako. So different background as well, and I think it's great to see that, because for a long time you were wondering when will we start to see this, but we're definitely starting to see it, as we are in the Ireland soccer team too.
Big time. Zach Bay Hammond was cornerback for the Kilkenny Miners this year. Real absolute powerhouse of a player. Can't think of the fella's name. He's of Polish descent. He's playing wing back. Timmy Wilk is the name for the Cork Miners this year. I think he's a sprinting champion, underage sprinting champion. We're seeing more and more of them now. Probably haven't seen too many at senior level, but it's only a matter of time, to be honest with you. Shane Stapleton, difficult name to pronounce even for himself. Someone referred to you as Shane Simpleton the other day, actually, which I thought was quite clever in fairness, and not something that I've thought of before.
A lad I used to work with called me Staying Stapleton.
Yeah, I actually love when you turn it the other way around, to be honest with you, I have to say, yeah.
Clarenbridge beat Loughrea. That was meant to be desperate conditions, 110-17. Not really a modern hurling score. It was 5 points to 6 at half time, so this was attritional stuff. Shane Bannon, Shane Ryan, TJ Brennan, Michael Daly, Mark Kennedy and Gavin Lee were all excellent. I was touching base with David Connors at the Tuam hurled over this, but like, that is a big scalp there. They've been winning an awful lot of minors, I think 5 of the last 7, and Loughrea were regarded as one of the better teams left. So that's interesting now that both Loughrea and Turlough Moore are gone. Like, Clarenbridge's Evan Nyland, he missed 5 frees, which, you know, that really wouldn't be him at all. So that does tell you, that speaks to how poor the weather was. And if you talk to anyone from Galway, they always remind you how often it rains there.
Yeah, I think there was a Junior C game called off the day before because of rain in Galway over the weekend. Fairly sure I saw that. Could have been David himself actually tweeting that. But like, it's amazing once we get to this time of the year, like, conditions just can be absolutely woeful. I remember Burr playing Young Ireland's in a Leinster final, maybe 02. It was 2-5 to 1-2. Like, it was just awful. The conditions were absolutely atrocious. I remember Burr playing their neighbours Crinkle in a junior match as well in awful conditions. It was 1-2 apiece after full time. Absolute epic stuff. I was actually chatting to Damien Martin last week. Damien Martin, the Offaly legend, and he said as Offaly's fortunes were turning, they actually played Wicklow in a game and beat them 3 points to 1, where all 3 points came from their half back line. But this is obviously not that bad. But 110 to 1-7 in modern day hurling is outrageously low scoring. No, it's very, like, we talked about Listowney and the Village drawing 12 points apiece. Like, that's so low scoring now. But it's hard to legislate for conditions when they're this bad. But that's a we played Clarenbridge plenty of times. The fact that you were able to read out 6 players that were key for Clarenbridge, and Salmon and Evan Nyland were not on that list, is a really positive thing for Clarenbridge. And they have loads of underage success, so they'll fancy their chances now. They're after beating a Loughrea side who've been in around knockout stages in the last couple of years. I think, like, when you're looking at the quarterfinal draw, and we'll go into it in a minute, it does have an unbelievably open. Take Thomas's out, and you think any of these other 7 teams could potentially win a county title. Yeah,
it's hard to look past Thomas's. Actually, Thomas's versus Turlough Moore finished 8 points apiece last year in the group. Weather in Galway leaves a lot to be desired, says ML89. Actually, you remember Dixborough against Castlecomer? Was it 1-8 to 1-6?
Yeah, I think it was that, yeah. But a lot of that, in fairness, that's in Kilkenny, where there's no, like, mad prevailing winds coming in. When you look at, they'd often say about, football up in Donegal, why Jim McGuinness had to play the way he played was because they're playing club games and they have this absolute monster breeze coming in from the west coast, and, like, you can't kick the ball a lot of the time. So, Donegal, Mayo, Galway hurling obviously as well, the conditions are going to dictate an awful lot, particularly, like, when you play games. And I know a lot of these games weren't played there, but when your county games were played in Pearse Stadium, I don't remember going to Salt Hill for a game where there wasn't a monster breeze blowing down the pitch in either direction. I don't recall it, and that's just the natural. When you're geographically located that close to the west coast, that's going to be the case. That it's going to cause havoc with games, and it's going to dictate the way games are played.
Which kind of makes it surprising that Galway have had so many tasty hurlers over the years. You'd think that the weather would sort of prevent that to some degree, but maybe it's an added challenge, and maybe there's even more practice required, and even more skills are honed trying to do it in that sort of weather. The Wild West, as John O'Sullivan says here, lads, would you be interested in doing a few watch-alongs for the hurling next year? So obviously that's, for anyone who hasn't seen that before, that's where, like, we'd have just a little chat show here as we're watching, let's say, a Tip Kilkenny, or as we're watching maybe even a club game. If that's something people would be interested in, comment and do let us know. But there could be a bit of crack to that.
I think that'd be a bit of crack now, yeah, I have to say, yeah. And we all, it's all one thing, like, talking about, stuff after a game, but we all lose our minds during matches, different things that are happening. I'd be going mad, referee different things and stuff. Yeah. And we're probably both going to favour the back a lot of the time too. So, that's just natural.
Yeah, Gogglebox with Verney and Saint, make sure it's a Tip game. Obviously trying to get the reaction out of me. Pow likes that for sure. Gort beat Portumna over the weekend, 122-218. Dug it out in the end, as I said, no Joe Canning there. And Kilconearn beat Porrick Pierces after extra time, 219 to 18 points. Younger legs stood to them, but of course they've St. Thomas's next. That's going to be a tough job there for sure. Capitagler are going to be against Gort, Crockwell against Kilnadeem and Leitrim, and Tommy Larkins are against Clarenbridge. So the quarterfinals are next weekend.
So open, isn't it, though? When you look
at
it,
well, Thomas's
outside of Thomas's, like Crockwell, Kilnadeem and Leitrim, Capitagler have obviously been thereabouts the last couple of years, been to a load of semi-finals. Tommy Larkins and Clarenbridge. Don't recall Tommy Larkin's been in around the semi-final in recent years. But I think actually there was another game over the weekend. I sent you on the clip. Oran Moore and Marie were playing. Did you see that doubled over the bar effort from Niall Burke? It was absolutely sweet. Like that's a lad that's totally in the zone to realise that he doesn't have much time and the ball was just thrown out to him and he just flicked it over. Now it did help, I'd say, that was on his left, because he does love going off the left, and I think you would be the same as well. If you were striking a 20 or 30 yard pass to someone and your life depended on it, I'd do it off my left every day of the week. And the same if a ball came in the air, I'd much prefer to strike it off my left. There's less things going on or something, whereas when you're on your right, it just feels more awkward. Yeah,
distance on the right, short accuracy on the left.
100%.
I think a lot of people would be like that. Look, we'll go on to the Clare Senior Hurling Championship now. So there was a fairly dramatic weekend, the quarterfinals there. Inagh, Namona, Ballyea, Éire Óg and Newmarket and Fergus, they won. There was obviously a bit of relegation too with Clooney Quinn beating Clare Castle. That's a group system in the relegation. Is there any other group system relegation? Please get your comments in and let us know. 1-4 for Josh Geiler was massive for Inagh, Namona. Aidan McCarthy, he was excellent. I think he got 6 points. Davy Fitz. So I thought there was a really good spine to that team. Cahill Connolly or something, McConaughey, something like that. He was full back combative. He had to go off injured, seemed to be favouring his hip as he went off late in the game. But he fought for some great ball from full back. Jason McCarthy driving forward for centre back. David Fitzgerald, people who know him, that rangy midfielder / half back / half forward. Like, he's very, very versatile player. He drove forward from the back to score 3 brilliant points, including one where he got it in more or less inside his own 14, I think, drove out towards the 65 in his own half and left side from the sideline, just drove it over. It was brilliant. His other 2 points
that was very Austin Gleeson-esque, I have to say. I thought the way he even struck the ball, I looked back at it a couple of times, had that same kind of a style to him. He actually robbed the ball off someone on his own 14, which made it even better, careered away from him. And then I was thinking, as he threw up the ball, he slowed up to throw it up. And I thought, oh no, is he after doing all this and he's going to get hooked? Which was just,
he should have been hooked.
He probably should have been. Yeah, it was an absolute heartbreaker. But that just shows kind of the athleticism that he has. And you'd imagine like that Brian Lohan will try and find a place for this sort of a player. The only probably issue with him is that he drifts in and out of games. And he's brilliant coming into a game as an impact sub, but in the game, some of the games he started maybe with Clare, he hasn't he definitely hasn't been as dominant as he was coming off the bench. But they do have a lovely spine to their team, and that was kind of eye catching for me as well. And even Podge Collins had that chance to hit the crossbar, and then Inagh Kilnamona go down the other end and get a score, and that's just how quickly that kind of game changed. But they'll fancy their chances. I think everybody will fancy their chances now with the bridge gone, and with and we'll talk about in a minute with Tony Kelly going to be out for Ballyea as well.
Yeah, and I wonder, Davy Fitz seems to be in line for kind of Clare Club Player of the Year. He's flying it. He seems like one of the guys who'd be perfect to play the Kyle Hayes type, Caleb Lyons type role, and it takes us a certain type of player to be able to do that. Like, he's got the athleticism. Does he have the natural defensive capabilities to match in with it? Maybe that's something he needs to develop a little bit. But athleticism-wise and ability to score and hurt teams from deep, he definitely has it there. And you look at other teams and think, who could develop that type of player? I mean, I look at Tipperary and I say Michael Breen, who I've obviously wanted in the backs for years. But you can see why I would suggest him for that type of role, even though I thought he was quite good at wing forward, especially closed down Hayes for the majority of that Munster final. So I can see why you might play him further up the field. Is there anyone else you think that could be converted? Now, here's a left of field one. And so he's my own club mate with Cuala, Mark Schutte. He's always played in the forwards. but it just hasn't quite happened for him the last couple of years, and obviously injuries haven't helped. But because his ability to cover the ground, like he's a fair train when he gets going, and especially if he had space in front of him. Now he obviously played with Dublin in football as well and was often a wing forward there. So being further out the field would be nothing new to him. Whereas the defensive capabilities is the next thing. But imagine Mark Schutte collecting ball inside his own 65 and running into space. He's got that athleticism, that Calum Lyons type athleticism that I could see, working quite well, assuming he got the defensive part right.
Have you said this to Eddie Brennan? Is this something that you're looking at doing at club level, or have you talked to Matty Kenny? It's funny, like, yeah, you'd be on good terms with both. Yeah, you'd be on good terms with your club manager and good terms with the Dublin county manager as well. The only thing I'd say about someone like Mark Schutte is that he doesn't have probably age on his side like a Davy Fitzgerald would or a Kyle Hayes would to make that switch, or probably even a Michael Breen would. Schutte is probably coming towards the latter stages, I would have said, of his Dublin career.
I'd say he's about 28.
Whereas Davy Fitzgerald is mid, 26, I'd say. Hayes is obviously 21. Breen is not old either as well.
He's about the same age, actually.
Same age? Okay.
He's about the same age. He's
okay.
I'm just looking it up here. Maybe he's 27 and maybe Mark's closer to 29. So maybe there's a bit of a disparity there. But a lot of it too would just be the amount of injuries that Mark has had. But I don't know. Is it ever too late to swap position?
At county level, I'd say it's tougher. Like, and usually...
Didn't Ken McGrath play centre forward for 7 years and then went back centre back?
Hold on now a second now. You're talking about like one of the greatest of all times. He could play wherever you like.
But I'm not saying he's going to have a Ken McGrath-esque career. I'm just saying it's not too late.
Hey, come here, right? So Dublin don't have enough scoring forwards. They have a really good back line. So we'll take one of our scoring forwards and put them back in the back line.
And meanwhile, put Chris Crummy up the other end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, anyway, it's just a suggestion. But just to get more out of Mark, because the last couple of seasons, it hasn't happened quite enough for him. And actually, look here from Red Lad, John Connolly went from full forward to centre-back recently, and he's in his 30s.
Well, that's true. That's a fair point.
I'm Red Lad, boy. You're digging me out of a hole there. I'm struggling for a second.
And it's somewhere he had played quite sparingly at club level, by all accounts, from anyone I've been chatting in Clare. So that was a big departure, and he he didn't get an All-Star nomination this year, and I'm not sure how, because he was definitely one of the better centre backs through league and championship. So listen, no, fair point there. And the only flip point I would have said on Schutte is that the injuries that he's had. But John Conlon has had injuries as well, and he was able to go back there as well. So maybe, you never know.
Yeah, well, Cratloe in this game, they started really well, and there was that real, I'd say, minute where everything sort of changed. If I remember, who was it that got the ball? Was it Podge Collins turned with the ball? He'd scored a couple of points easy on, and he hit the crossbar, almost hit the triangle, where the bracket where the crossbar and the post touch, straight up the other end, and Geiler puts it in, and it's that 6-point swing. And whereas you could have been 5 points down, you're now a point up. And from there on, Ina Kilnamona sort of took over. Aidan McCarthy started to take over. Jason McCarthy started to do better. Davy Fitz came into the game. And there was 2 glorious scores in a row by Aidan McCarthy in the 60th minute. Markham couldn't quite keep with him. There was a lovely ball going in. And to be honest, I don't blame Markham either. It was just a very, very tough situation to be caught in there. 4 right wides in a row from Conor McGrath killed him in the second half, as Patrick Hickey. He did show some flashes too. We know about all the injuries he's had over the years. And Adrian McGrath adds, that's Fitzgerald's second best point this year. He got one that he caught under the crossbar in the group stage. Brian Lohan looks at defending first, hence Paddy Fitz in ahead of Fitzgerald. So, and I think Paddy Fitzgerald didn't start for the Bridge over the weekend and their loss to Ayr Oak. I think he'd suffered an injury, and obviously they couldn't start him, so that was a bit of a loss there. So great win for Ina Kilnamona. Fair play to Tony Kelly to come off the field for the last 22 minutes and score 2 points as they beat Kilmaley 17 points to 16. Off for surgery today. But, having watched the clips that Buff Egan had out, by God, Tony Kelly was moving. So I wonder, is this one of these situations where there's probably been discussions between Tony Kelly, his county manager, his club manager, and Robbie Hogan, I think, is the Ballier manager, and he said after the game that he was going for surgery today on the ankle, which might keep him out of even the league next year. So obviously this is a serious enough sort of an ankle blow that he's going to be out for that long. And maybe Tony is having to weigh up everything, the whole club situation, being right for next year. it's a tough spot to be caught in, because obviously he'd love to play in the semi-final and hopefully the final, but then maybe into a Munster Championship, and maybe he misses next summer if they keep going. What a nightmare situation for a player.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I didn't realize that he was actually getting the surgery today, which makes it a bit more understandable. I'd imagine he was of the opinion. I'd imagine he's in awful pain with it firstly, which stands to reason. But I'd say this was just like, can I make it much worse? I'm going for surgery tomorrow. If I'm needed, I'll come on. But it's obviously something that's very bad. It's obviously not a case where he could come on and start the semi-final or come on in the semi-final. I'd say this was it just looks like a last-ditch effort to try and help his club over the line. And it must be, listen, sure, the severity of the injury must be very bad. There must be an awful lot of work that needs to be done if he's going for surgery. And we're October the 18th today, and he's looking at missing, the vast majority of the league, which is the guts of 6 months, by the end of April, that he's going to be out for. So it must be very, very bad. And they must have just looked at this as a kind of a shot to nothing. My initial kind of thought was, timing is strange. And it's strange that he's getting it while the club championship is going on. But it's obvious this was obviously just a last-ditch shot at, I'm getting the surgery tomorrow. I'll come on today if you need me for 20 minutes, but I'm done. And I'm sure he was obviously in bother in recent weeks. Is that the same ankle that he had trouble with against Waterford in 2020 as well? There could be kind of a legacy kind of an issue there. But I suppose the most important thing for him and Ballier and Clare is to have him right in 2022.
Yeah, and his searing pace is obviously one of his greatest assets. He can hurl like no other, so obviously he has that too. But he's 27. He turns 28 in December, if Wikipedia is to be believed. And sometimes when you have these players who hit the scene in, when they're 18. So if I remember correctly, 2012 he scored that 21-yard free against Dublin for Clare down at Cusack Park in the qualifier. So he was 18 then. So obviously he was precocious. He's on the scene in a long time. He would have been playing, no doubt, with minor, being dragged around by different teams. You'd imagine college teams, playing with the under-21s, the seniors, winning young and under-21 player of the year, young and senior player of the year. So he's probably got a lot of miles on the clock, including a couple of decent runs with Cratloe. And sometimes a player who's so precocious and plays that much when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, their career tends to hit skids around 30, or they lose that bit of pace, or the legs start to go a little bit. Now, hopefully it doesn't happen with Tony Kelly, but I'm just saying there's a general trend of players sort of miles on the clock. He probably is looking at it and thinking, I'm in the prime of my game right now. I need to make sure that I'm starting the season the right way. So sometimes you have to make awkward decisions. Now, it's a pre-planned surgery, according to Patrick Hickey here, and I'm sure it is. But he kind of probably has to make a decision for the greater good of his own career too here, because he needs to maximize what he can get out of himself too. If he plays for, let's say, the next 2 months on an ankle that needs surgery, he's only hurting himself in the long run, and maybe both Clare and Ballier.
Yeah, and he's also putting back the idea of surgery maybe till after Christmas. Then he's going into 2022. And he's in trouble. James S. says Kelly is getting back surgery from carrying Clare so much, which is, some people would agree with that. Others, maybe not as much. But he definitely, I think in this case, you need a manager that can see beyond what's in front of his face. And a lot of GA managers can't. And they just want to extract everything they can out of you at this moment in time, and they don't think of next year or the next game. They just think of right now. And in fairness, Robbie Hogan was over Ballier, wasn't he, when they were in the club final against G, I think, in 2017, wasn't it? Yeah. So he's obviously got a good relationship with Kelly, and he's obviously a Ballier clubman as well, so he can see the bigger picture. And this is the bigger picture. His ankle's obviously in a bad way as well. So you're better just to go and get the thing sorted now. And do you know what? It's it would be very, very difficult to win it without him. But they're only 2 wins away from winning it without him. They still have lots of really, really good players. Niall Deasy is still going to probably take the brunt of the work in attack. Gary Brennan, I presume, is still going for them as well.
Midfield, I believe.
Yeah. So there's still.
And then you have Jack Brown. Yeah. Jack Brown, who came back in after injury, and I think he was named at centre back, but he played. I think cornerback, because he was man marking Dara Keane, and obviously did a pretty good job there. And this
Paul Flanagan,
the Ballyate, who obviously really established himself this year with the seniors. But it was only, remember 2017, so they got to the All-Ireland final, and when they won a couple of years later, when they won Munster, wasn't something like 7 of their team from the previous era no longer there. So this is a team that obviously has a bit of depth too.
No, definitely. Yeah, we played them last year in a challenge game. They've got lots of good talent, even when Kelly wasn't on the field. And I don't think Gary Brennan was playing that day. He was actually injured last year. So they missed him last year, and they're going to be missing Kelly this year. So it'd be a fair win if they're able to win it. It'd be like the time Ballyhale won Kilkenny one year without Cha and without Shefflin in their pomp. So if they're able to win a Clare title without Kelly, it'd be some achievement. It's going to be tough, but I definitely wouldn't be ruling them out just on the basis that he's missing.
Yeah, Nameless King says, you're right, Shane. Look at Joe Canning. Don't get me wrong, he's my favourite hurler ever, and I'm a Limerick man, but the miles on the clock and accumulation of injuries took an awful lot out of him. Gary Brennan was some footballer, says James S. Also, I see Declan Hannon mentioned here. I'm sure that's the conversion from being a forward into a back. I couldn't believe it when he was converted at the time, but you know what? It's worked out pretty well.
Well, Shane, funnily enough on that one, 3 of the 6 Limerick backs are converted forwards. Barry Nash was a corner forward, wing forward. Kyle Hayes was a centre forward. And Declan Hannon was a wing forward, so centre forward, full forward at times as well. So it's mad to think, like, listen, maybe your idea is actually making some sense now. The only thing I'll say as well is, you've seen Mark Schutte in training. I haven't seen him in training. You know what he does well or what he's potential to do well. So you're probably going to have a better eye for something like that than I would just watching from the outside. But maybe it's something that could happen. Maybe I'll get a phone call from M. Kenny at the end of this and he'll say, Shane, I never thought of that. You're a genius. I doubt he will, but you never know.
Conor Heaney says that Hegarty was a back. So you see an awful lot of that. You don't see that in too many sports where guys are converted from back to forward and vice versa. Like as a friend of mine says, how often, like imagine if Harry Kane was put right back in his next game and then up centre forward and then midfield. Yeah. So you see an awful lot of that in GA. But then again, obviously playing resources are that much thinner. So you have to make the best of what you've got. Austin Gleeson forward back, he's been there with that also.
Just an interesting one on Hegarty. I saw the team picture for St. Patrick's over the weekend, and he was playing centre back. And it's an interesting team pick because like they wouldn't have massive numbers there, and there's kind of all sorts of different ages and shapes and sizes kind of playing on the team. And then all of a sudden you have this absolute monster at the back. But a lot of the time with club teams, like needs kind of must, like if he plays centre back, he's going to get on a load of ball for you. You can play a lot of your puck outs through him. The opposition are either going to have to play around him or puck it down on top of him. Generally, with a weaker team, you would be putting your best player centre back because that's where they can have the biggest impact on the match.
Yeah, I think Niall Burke has played forward and back for Galway, says Nameless King.
Don't remember him playing back.
Can't say I remember either. Ayr Oak beat 6 Mile Bridge, and they didn't just beat them, they beat them comprehensively, 218 to 111. They come close to the bridge in the semi-final last year, the quarter-final the year before, and you kind of wonder was it going to be the same old story. But, there was doubts over Cathal Malone and Jamie Shanahan for 6 Mile Bridge. They played. There was that suspension, the delayed suspension to Ayr Oak boss Matt Shannon. But they've come through, and they look good from the start here. They led from the start. I think they were something like 6 points ahead at the first water break. They had it out to 9, I think, by half-time or something like that. Aaron Fitzgerald was magnificent from start to finish in this game. A player that I think got injured in possibly the Dublin League game this year. And I'd like the cut of his jib, that I'd seen in the league. And I wonder, will he become a bit of a factor for Clare next year?
Was it ribs? Was it broken ribs he got during the league? Or was it? I think it was. I was
thinking shoulder. I was thinking shoulder, but you might be right on that. Danny Russell, he scored 8 points. David Reedy and Shane O'Donnell got 1-2 apiece. Darren O'Brien, Darragh Walsh and Oran Cahill, they scored 2 each. Alex Morey, he scored 5 for the bridge. Jamie Shanahan scored 1-1. I think that was all from frees, and a few other players, they contributed also. Patrick Hickey said it was broken ribs, so you're on the money there. Conor Heaney, can Davy do umpire now, Shane? I suppose he can, yeah. His team are out of the championship. I'd have no massive issue now. Comment here from MN89. On that topic, Robert Lewandowski made his Polish debut coming on as a right back. Just that's an interesting one. I didn't know about that. Obviously, he's an unbelievable striker these days.
Yeah, you'd imagine, I'm using the wrong word here, but you'd imagine vertically that doesn't make sense. Like, he's so tall, you just wouldn't be considering him as a right back. You'd at least be looking at him as a centre back or potentially a goalkeeper, just with the size of him. So that's definitely a unique one. There's definitely obviously we talked about Pat Fox before. Wasn't he? He was a corner. I think that's the great. I think to me that's the greatest switch to go from being a tight marking cornerback to an elusive corner forward is that's the dream. It's something I would aspire to, but will never even come close to achieving. Interesting, Shane, just on the bridge and Air Og, we'd kind of talked about it. I think we actually talked about it last year. It was Davy Fitz coming up against Shane O'Donnell, the man who, essentially won him that All-Ireland in 2013. And we didn't probably talk about that enough this week. But O'Donnell is clearly back to himself again, which is a great sight to see. As they always say, the most foulable forward in the game. 1-2, and having him fit, and we'll talk about Clooney Quinn in a minute, and potentially having Peter Quinn available would be huge for Brian Lowe next year, particularly if there's some guys are going to have to carry the can in the league without Tony Kelly.
Peter Duggan, I'm sure you mean.
Sorry, who did I say?
Peter Quinn.
Yeah, Clooney. I mixed Clooney Quinn and Peter Duggan together. I merged them all together.
Sean O'Sullivan says, I may be wrong, but I believe Ken McGrath won 3 All-Stars in 3 different lines. Surely a unique achievement. I think Tommy Walsh did it also. Ken says Ozzy is better than him. Ozzy says Ken is the man, but they're similar players.
Didn't Tommy win All-Stars? Did Tommy win All-Star cornerback?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He won.
Yeah, cornerback, wing back, midfield, wing forward, I think, yeah.
I think Aidan O'Shea has won it in 3 different lines of the field. I'm sure there are plenty of players who have. Traumspieler says Graham Geraghty, All-Star wing back, turned into All-Star full forward. Some player. Didn't Brian Corcoran win Hurler of the Year in 2 different positions?
He won. He was the last cornerback to win one in 1992, I think.
Yeah.
Graham Geraghty is an interesting one. Didn't Alex Ferguson was at one of the Dublin Meath games, and wasn't Graham Geraghty the player that he was taken by? And then all of a sudden, Graham Geraghty ends up over in Arsenal, didn't he, on trials? And Paul Merson, Paul Merson say he was the fastest player he's nearly ever seen or something.
Yeah, Eamon Cregan won an All-Ireland in 73 playing centre back, and was one of the greatest corner forwards of his generation. Yeah, absolutely was. Nisha says the biggest challenge going from a forward to the back is the man marking aspect. Naturally, as a forward, you'd be watching the ball, so maybe that's why a team that gives such license to its backs to drive forward, like Limerick do, because they bring the midfield and half forwards back so much foraging for ball. Barry Nash is generally sort of the spare back. If the other team plays with a sweeper, obviously Hannon will hold his position, but Nash tends to be quite free also. It's almost as if himself and Hannon are sort of zonally holding their position, and he gets on a lot of ball. Obviously, Hayes has huge license to drive forward, although he does defend quite well.
I think he's a brilliant defender, I have to say, for a guy who's converted, but centre back has always been, one of his favourite positions. Brian Wheelaton is mentioned there, half back and forwards also. It's funny, he only went to the forwards when he was in trouble. He went there in 98 because Brian McAvoy was giving him a bit of bother, and ends up man of the match, All-Star full forward and Hurler of the Year. And in the odd club game and in the odd county game, he'd be thrown up full forward kind of when we needed something to happen. It's funny that you don't see that nearly as much now in games, I think, where a centre forward or centre back been thrown up full forward. I just don't think you see it nearly as much now.
Michael did it for O'Donovan Rossa recently, and he was he involved in a couple of goals? Yeah, I think he was.
You definitely don't see it as much though, because I think managers are kind of thinking, I don't know, it's a very last ditch kind of a tactic, but it still works. It still works at times.
Yeah, didn't Hayes play in the backs underage?
Centre back, I think. Yeah.
Back
Saying that, I think he played full forward in the minor final in 16, but he definitely played centre back, or centre back was his favourite position growing up anyway.
Yeah, I think he plays centre back for Kildimo now at the moment. Traumspieler Adrian Rowan was a good one, played goalie for Kilkenny, then was a Savage wing forward in 92-93.
John Troy's the same, yeah.
Newmarket on Fergus, they beat Wolf Tones 115 to 15 points. They were down by 6 at half time, and Newmarket looked to be gone there. But they cut off the ball going into Aaron Cunningham. He was obviously doing an awful lot of damage, ended the game with 5 points. Colin Ryan, who we've had on the show before, he missed a couple of frees, but when the pressure was on the second half, he kind of stepped up there. He ended up with 10 points overall, 6 frees, 3 65s. Massive contribution there. Mikey McInerney, he scored 1-1. That was the only goal 3 minutes into the second half after getting a pass from Owen Hayes. Owen Guilfoyle also scored a couple, as did Peter Power. He scored 1, and Ian Crimmins also scored. That was notable that there was a few different free takers for Wolf Tones in this game. Keane O'Rourke, he scored 1. Ben O'Gorman, he scored a couple of frees. And then also, I don't know what you make of this, Verney. I was just looking at the different free takers for Wolf Tones in their last Newmarket and Fergus. Aaron Shanahan scored 2 frees. I would never have thought that he'd take frees.
No, he would have been in the John Milan category for me now. I just wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought like he would look that natural hitting a free. I have to say, but needs obviously must at different stages during that game. But no, he wouldn't have been the obvious one for me now. It's like one time Ollie Baker came in over Offaly and he had my own clubmate Sean Ryan practicing frees, and we were all just looking over like, what is going on here? This lad, I wouldn't like if there was 5 lads that wanted to have the ball in their hand from play to put it over, he wouldn't be one of them, and he's hitting frees. No disrespect, Sean, but I definitely wouldn't have you near frees anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, relegation game then. Clooney Quinn beat Clare Castle. As I said, this is in the group stage. Clooney Quinn actually had a penalty which Keane Broderick saved from Peter Duggan, but Duggan did pitch in with 11 points here. Martin Duggan with 3, Derek Yo also with 3. For Clare Castle, Bobby Duggan, who we all remember from the Clare under-21 and minor teams, he scored 9, 7 frees, and Killian McDermott also pitched in with 5 points. So the Magpies will face O'Callaghan Mills in the second round of the relegation, with Clooney Quinn up against Crusheen the next day out. ML89 says the main reason for Galway struggling with goalkeepers is that at underage the idea was to play a very good young lad to get him experience, e.g. Eugene Clunan, Alan Kearns, Kevin Broderick. So therefore, an actual dedicated goalkeeper wasn't in the goals.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That would happen at club a lot, where your best forward for your minors, maybe at 14 or 15 years of age, could end up as your goalie, because maybe they'll take a lot of punishment if they're playing outfield, but they'll be able to add a lot from the goals maybe and be able to pick out passes. And then when you get to a certain age or come up to senior, you maybe don't have a keeper. Yeah, that's a fair point too.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll talk about the Tipperary Club Championship now. Keep getting your comments in. Let us know if there's anything in particular you want to talk about, or any other comments you want to, or any other areas you want to touch on. With the Tipperary semi-finals, the draw will only be made tonight, but we know who's in there now. And it's the 4 teams that everyone was kind of thinking are most likely to win the county title, which is Burrislee, Turlough, Sarsfields, Lockmore, Castellini, and Killadangan. Now, it was like there was a couple of really good games over the weekend. We'll start out with Burrislee.
Shane, just one quickly. This is Friday Night Lights. Friday Night Lights has to be a thing nearly, doesn't it? At club and county level now. Just like when you get this type of game, this was brilliant. Like, it
was great stuff. Yeah, I mean, I was watching it. I was on the edge of my seat, along with I watched it on the stream now here in Dublin, and obviously, you'd have people playing there, including a brother and a friend of mine from Burrislee who also lives in Dublin. He came down and watched it, and his brother came on and all that. So you can imagine us hopping and trotting watching that game. It finished up after extra time, 124 to 219. Now, Burrislee looked to be in control of this game. I'm not saying that they were a mile ahead or anything, but like early on you thought, okay, Burris are in decent shape here. They'll probably go on and win this game. But Mullinahone took over from the second quarter. I think Burrislee only scored a point in the second quarter of the game. And Mullinahone were 5 points up late on. Kevin Maher got sent off for a helmet pull, and I don't think he can have any complaints there. He won't, certainly if video evidence has been used, he's not going to get off on that one. But anyway, there was a bit of schmozzling going along, and sometimes that can just kind of happen. I don't think it was a premeditated, and I certainly haven't seen him ever get red carded before. But you'd think with 5 points up and a man up, that Mullinahone would see it out. Now, this is a team that only came up from the Seamus O'Reen last year. So to get themselves into this situation in year one, have been back up at the top level with, Owen Kelly's in the team, Paul Curran's in the team, but they have a couple of other excellent players in there also. They did kind of throw it away late on. And funny the way it worked out. Burrislee had a free on the 21, and I think this is when the red card happened. I might, because there's so many games, you might mix up little things here and there between games. But I think there was a throw ball. Burrislee won the clash ball, if you want to call it like that. They won a free. Then the Kevin Maher incident happened, so the free was reversed. So then there was a throw ball. So instead of Burrislee knocking a point over the bar, there was a clash ball. Burrislee won it, and it was hand passed to Niall Kenny, and he flashed it into the top corner. So what a weird little exchange there.
Very weird that things like that work in their favour.
I know, yeah. And then Burrislee took it to extra time. And rather than bringing on, Kieran Maher, who was playing wing forward, people might remember he scored that goal for Burrislee against Ballygunner in the Munster final in late 2019. He'd scored 3 points from play during normal time. He wasn't brought back on for extra time. He'd been subbed in the second half. JD, who had a very quiet game, James Devaney, he wasn't brought back on for extra time. So this is a bit of a gamble now from, Johnny Kelly and the management team there, because like even JD, I don't know if people remember when he was playing for the under-20s this summer, he hadn't gone well in normal time against Waterford, came back on in extra time and he scored 3 points because everyone is tired and you think, right, this lad's pace is going to burn you out. But Bursley didn't go that way and they persisted a lot with long ball here, right? And they did get over the line for the finish in this game. But what do I keep saying is my issue with how Bursley are playing?
They play the ball blind a lot of the time, blind and long a lot of the time, and it's too predictable. It's
just too much long ball. So Dan McCormick is playing centre-back / sweeper and getting on a world of ball. But I don't know if it's just his own decision when he's out there or if it's the absolute instruction of management to go along onto the 2 Kenny Towers who are 6'4" and 6'7", to go on them all the time. But it's just, to me, it's just too predictable. And if you were going to name out the 15 hurlers that Mullinahone have and the 15 hurlers that Bursley have, I would say that, with a few exceptions here and there, Bursley probably have 9, 10 of the better hurlers. I mean, I haven't sat down and figured it out, but look, that's just the eye test. That's my guess. And Mullinahone worked the ball out from the back and they did really well. And that's why they had themselves in a position to win this game. Whereas you're a half-back playing against Bursley, you see Dan McCormick or any of the defenders get the ball, you're just like, well, I'm not going to bother with the half-forward here. I'm just going to sprint backwards. So how do you expect a midfielder like, let's say, Kevin Maher, like Sean McCormick, JD playing wing forward, Jerry Kelly out in the half-forward line, and off the top of my head, I can't remember who else. But how are any of those players supposed to get into the game if no one's ever going short to them so that they can turn and go at their man or do a bit of interplay? Because every ball's going over their head. So, like, you can slay midfielders and half-forwards if you like, but if you bypass them every time you have the ball, what are they supposed to do?
The funny thing is that with everybody knowing that there's 2 big towers in the full forward line and thinking that the ball is going to go in there, you can sucker your team into sitting back too much and then get Jerry Kelly on the ball and then get JD on the ball and then get Sean McCormick on the ball. So they could definitely use that more to their favour. But yeah, it's kind of like if they're just striking long a lot of the time and it's a bit aimless, like that's okay in the last 5 minutes or something when you're looking for a score, or it's okay. I always say it to you and you say it as well. A long ball is fine and it keeps the team honest, but you can't just continue to do that. You have to, teams can't know that you're just going to hit it long. When you hit it long, there has to be the element of unpredictability because you haven't done it for a while, and then it works. If a long ball every 3 or 4 balls and they're going through the lines and going to Jerry Kelly could kill you from centre forward if he gets on the ball and if they play the ball through him, but they're not doing that enough at the moment. Definitely not.
Yeah, so I'd love to see, like, Ray McCormick has a lot of pace. So, like, Dan has plenty of pace. Brendan Maher can carry the ball too. But, like, I'd like to see them all bringing the ball out and handing it to JD and Kevin Maher and all those players, Jerry Kelly, and let them do damage. Because think about it. A lad who came in full forward, Tommy Fahy, who played, I think, in the full back line in the county final maybe 4 years ago. He's a big guy, probably 6'3", and he went in full forward and he did a bit of damage. But the game plan is more set up for a guy being thrown. Now, he scored a couple of goals for the juniors recently, so obviously that kind of influenced the decision. But the game plan more suited going long onto him than it did into Jerry Kelly and some of these other players. And that, to me, is the thing that doesn't fully make sense. But look, obviously this system, or a version of this system, got Bursley all the way to Club All-Ireland a few years ago. So it does work. But I just wonder, is it going to be caught out this year? It certainly did catch Bursley out last year in the quarterfinal against Drummond Inch. Another team that player for player, they have better players than right now. But, this system kind of caught them out. And the other thing is, I think Bursley, of the 4 semi-finalists going in, are least likely to win the county title right now, even though we don't know the draw, because Kevin Maher is going to be suspended. And Brendan Maher hurt his knee during the game. He looks like he may be carrying an injury anyway, because he's not quite standing out the way he normally would. So if those 2 players are going to be out the next day, in games of fine margins, take out 2 of your, like, a county under-20 player and a lad who's played for Tip for the last 12 or 13 years.
Yeah, particularly Brendan, sure, like we know from that Munster run and the run to the All-Ireland final that he was the heartbeat of it all. Similar to Tony Kelly in Ballier, I would say. they still have plenty of other lads that could. They still have plenty of other lads that could stand up on a given day. You mentioned the two Kennys, Jerry Kelly, JD Devaney. Yeah, your brother Paddy is still going well in defence. Like they still have a very good team. But if Brendan's not fit or he's only 60 or 70% fit, like that's a bit of a shark tank of semi-final. Like it doesn't matter who you get. It's going to be a game that's probably going to be on a knife edge, and you're going to have to be at the full of your health. And then throw in there's a Kevin Maher that's out now as well. Like that's just, you definitely would say that the odds are stacked against them a bit. But saying that, the year they won it, the odds were completely stacked against them in every game. But they had Brendan Maher fully fit for every game too. So they're definitely looking like outsiders of the four at the moment.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Bursley still could go all the way, but just that would be my recurring sort of issue, is that it's just too much long ball. But look, they're doing an awful lot right too to be into a county semi-final. Turlough dispatched Connolly 219 to 114. It wasn't completely fuss-free, but they were certainly the better team throughout most of the game. I thought this was very interesting. There was a tweet from St. Colin Kills afterwards. Our Priavida, Mr. Doyle, might have some explaining to do tomorrow after booking Mr. Derby's son Jack in the big match on Saturday. # Laker Gale at Tipperary GAA. Actually, the referee, Conor Doyle, he was in school with me. I think he was in the year behind me. He did a fine job, actually. He got plenty of compliments from, I think it was Michael Ryan was doing co-commentary in that match.
Just not Mr. Darby's son.
yeah. Can't believe he did that. But there would be good crack in the staff room today after that, wouldn't there?
Oh, there'd be great crack. Yeah. And that's funny. Like I did teaching practice spells in Turlough CBS and in Templemore as well. And every Monday or Tuesday, or even in the build up to a big game, there's so many different guys from different clubs and parishes. And even I was stretching into Offaly as well. There'd always be some sort of crack on the Monday or the Tuesday, or there was someone did something against a neighbouring club, and yeah, that's the crack in the staff room most weeks now, particularly in the winter.
Yeah, so Turlough were very composed throughout the skit. Ronan Maher lorded it, so he was spare man at centre back, and Clonolty at times made an.
Why would you leave him free? Why would you, of all players, why would you leave him free?
I'm sure the plan was to not drive every ball out and let Ronan collect it, but he got on the ball way too much, and the thing with him is he could score 5 points from his own half because he's such a brilliant striker of the ball. And if he's under no pressure, a little flick of the wrists and anywhere between 20 and 90 yards, he can probably put it into your eye, with just a little flick of the wrist because he's that good a striker of the ball. I actually don't know if there's a better striker of the ball in terms of distance per little flick. Who else has a more... who else can
it's
hit the
effortless.
ball like that? Yeah.
He can hit the ball 100 yards and it looks like he's sneezing on it. It barely looks like he's touching it. If you could, this doesn't make sense to me now. The one player, if you're playing Turlough, who you don't want to be on the ball is Ronald Marr. He's the one player you don't want. The opposite should have been occurring. He should have been nearly man-marked to keep him out of the game. He definitely should not have been the free player anyway. You want to be minimising his impact on the game, not maximising it.
Yeah, so, I mean, they've no title since 2017. I do think the aura around Tipperary is a little bit gone. But obviously, they are a team that can put up a big score. And Pa Burke won a couple of great frees early on, just using experience and putting himself between. I think Robert Doyle was the man marking him, young lad, 18 years of age. And obviously, Pa Burke has all that experience. I think he must be 32 or 3 at this stage. And a couple of times, he just got his body between the man and the ball and just, kind of suckered the defender in for the free. He then buried a goal. I think I can't remember, it was the corner forward who handed the ball off to him. And a bit when John McGrath kind of wound up for his goal at the weekend, when he's in close on goal and he's able to fully wind up and strike the ball. You knew Pa Burke, a bit against Upper Church last day, he wasn't going to miss. Dennis Maher, he scored a point early on. He won a penalty that was scored by Ronan Maher. Again, just a little flick. He sent the goalie the wrong way and lorded it. Saw a couple of good moments from Dylan Quirk, but got himself blocked down a few times, a couple of poor wides. So, I mean, that's not what you want to see from a guy who's pushing for county. Paddy could have, at one stage, there was a bit of an old dunt going. He could have got a red card, but then played on through an ankle injury, Paddy Maher. It looked pretty nasty at the time, but he got up and played on. So I wonder, will there be one of these things where it'll swell up afterwards, and how will he be for the semi-final? And I'm just trying to think otherwise. Jack Butler nailed a free from the 21 into the net. SARS, they'd only scored 2 points in the third quarter. Aidan McCormick, he scored 9 points. I don't know if you saw the bandage around his head.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, it was very funny. Well, sure, it wasn't funny for him, but it was funny for us looking at.
It's just sometimes there are certain knocks like that where like there's no other way of keeping the thing on. Like that's the only way. Like if you just it's going to rip off, or it's going to rip off if you just put a plaster or a little strapping on wherever it is. It's almost like the thing around the head as well. Like you can't just put like a little plaster here if there's a cut. You have to wrap it the whole way around. But it was definitely, I haven't seen that one in a while now. He looked like he's been held together by. I remember there was a wrestler, Sabu, one time, and they were in a barbed wire match, and he ripped open his arm. So he just, during the middle of the match, he just got a load of athletic tape and just wrapped it around his arm, and just covered in it. But I just thought that was strange the other day. It was definitely, I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Yeah. Noel Richard Hogan says, watch games on TV. Very disappointed with the crowd. Very small. Have you any comment? What can you say? I mean, if people show up or they don't, there's not really much more to say about it. Plus,
are streams having an effect on crowds now, do you think? And matches on TV having an effect on crowds? They shouldn't.
Well, the wins for Turlough and Lockmore mean that obviously they were on RT, so that would have had some sort of an impact. And I think the weather was particularly poor, especially during the Lockmore game, if I remember correctly. So maybe fewer people. You know yourself, there are people who would be like, just get it on telly. And like the streaming is obviously making money for county boards too. So, I mean, maybe I would have driven down if the games weren't available to watch, or with the streaming, it is convenient to watch a lot of games from home.
Your choice is made up for you when it's not been streamed or something like that, isn't it? But as you say, the crowds maybe mightn't be as big, but there's still a revenue stream coming in for county boards. I think Wexford made colossal money during the first year of COVID, with their streaming service when there was no one at games. They turned over huge money, and it is another important kind of revenue stream now. And I tell you what, it has done as well. One rare benefit of COVID is to have games that are you would never have seen live, potentially even relegation games, even intermediate games. Now there's a lot of people offering the streaming services now, and county boards generally, even if some Offaly I think aren't offering the games live at the moment, or they weren't anyway, but at least you can watch them the next day. It's great for supporters, and to be honest, it's great for players, and it's great for managers as well, particularly scouting other teams. There's plenty of, it's not the old tape trading that would have been going on back in the day when someone maybe recorded a match or something like that, and then you might be playing them and you're looking for a copy off the team that they were playing, or some sort of rogue kind of tactics like that. It's a lot of these games are kind of easy access to watch them now.
I wonder about the cost of streaming in different counties. Like Tip was 80 quid last year, it's 120 this year. I wonder, is that something that we're seeing in other counties? People comment in there and let us know how much it is to watch streaming in the different counties. A couple of other comments. When is the Tip draw? I think that's on this evening. It's probably on Tip FM. Are crowds still capped, or has that ended? I think, is it kind of basically half the capacity of a stadium, which in an awful lot of cases means that in real terms there's no real issue in terms of attendance, because like it's not like you're going to get 25,000 into Semple Stadium for clubs games at the moment.
Yeah, I have to say I've checked out of any of this attendance talk in recent time, just because it can't. It was so long. 500 are allowed, or 1,000 allowed, or 20% are allowed. And as you say yourself, a lot of them are still being played in big enough venues that can hold big crowds. So even if it's half, or even if it's a quarter, you're not going to be going over that quota.
Yeah, Dublin is free, says Red Lad. It is actually. I think Dublin have had it free for a few years even before that. It wasn't just a pandemic move that they got the games on the streams all of a sudden, and they would have had sponsors, and maybe they're just a bit more set up commercially to do that. So it will be interesting to see if other county boards can do that in the future. Elizabeth Howard says, yes, many who have purchased streams watch at home. For me, I love to be there, and many do. I mean, in my case, like, in terms of trying to do this show on a Monday, sometimes you're like, I nearly have to watch from home. Like if I had to go over to the Cuala match yesterday, then you'd be chasing your tail for the rest of the day trying to figure out what happened and everything else, because you wouldn't be flicking between channels. You wouldn't be able to watch the end of one game. You'd be missing so much. Patrick Hickey says get weekend pass for 25 in Clare. But can you do a season pass, Patrick? That's what I'm wondering. Or basically, if you're watching for 6 weekends, is that 150 quid you've gone? Can you only do that? Interested to know that. And I think we'll jump on to the next one. Lockmore Castleiney against Killerwan McDonough's. You might give out some of the details on that.
Yeah, it was kind of all done in the first half, really, wasn't it? In fairness, and it was around everywhere on Saturday. Basically, John McGrath's exploits in the first half. That 4-5 definitely looks like he's got his mojo back again. I saw someone put in a comment there saying, pray for mojo. That was in a reference to The Simpsons. I think it was, pray for mojo back in the day. But John McGrath definitely has his mojo back. And I loved that first goal. I love balls being pulled on it around the square because they're unstoppable. They literally, like, ground hurling is dead mostly out the pitch, but a ground stroke in around the goals, like, there's no stopping that. If he connects with that anyway properly, there's no time for the defender even to react. So a little flick or a pull like that around the edge of the square is great. He had 2 goals inside 13 minutes. The game was essentially over. He obviously got he got a penalty then before a half time as well. So
2 of them.
Yeah, 2 of them. Sorry, the game was over by half time. Kilruane got back into it a bit, but that kind of happens in a game. You're always at arm's length. You might get back to 7 or 8, but you're never going to get really much closer. And this was impressive from Lockmore, having been very good against Killinall the week before. This was a big step up. And you have to say, for Kilruane, kind of all the turkeys came back to roost again, didn't they? Really, the same problems that we've probably talked about 3 or 4 years now, I'd say, really, that they just haven't really delivered when it mattered most and when the need was greatest. And it kind of happened again last weekend, you'd have to say.
Yeah, I would say that, any trope you'd want to put at Kilruane, they proved it here. I mean, they played a sweeper. Niall O'Mara had been out for 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks since he played, 5 weeks since Cian Darcy played because he got suspended, but it was an ankle injury for Niall O'Mara. He came back in and played sweeper. So, like, obviously he's like total sort of hurler in terms of like a county lad going back to club level. He's just a brilliant hurler, great ball carrier, the whole lot. But they played a sweeper in the first half only and conceded 4 goals. So what does that tell you? It tells you that Lockmore were able to win ball. Liam Tracy was full forward. He caught a few balls, won a few dirty balls, including the one for the first goal for John McGrath. You're going to go through the Kilruane defence without getting touched, is what it seemed at times. I mean, Niall O'Mara, he tried to feed a ball out at the wing and someone else got turned over then. And it was just walking through, and Noel McGrath, I think that he handed the ball off for John McGrath to be able to wind up and blast it into the net. So you have an extra man back in your own defence and Lockmore are able to walk through you. I mean, if someone is soloing up the centre, you might let man through, you might let ball through, but you won't let both of them through. And unfortunately, that was the problem for Lockmore. It needs to be far harder stuff. You want to be thinking, I'm taking my life in my hands soloing down the centre at Kilruane. And nothing could be further from the truth because they've great hurlers, but where are the lads that are looking to kill you?
As a fairness, it's funny you should say that. As I said, I was chatting to Damien Martin. He did a piece with him in the paper today. It's 50 years since he won the first All-Star. And he was saying, they always said about, his Rhinos team in particular that won a load of county titles, and even the Offaly team of the 80s, you'd get a fair slap coming in, but whatever you got on the way in, it was twice as bad on the way out. And basically to deter you from ever coming back in again. And he played in the era of burying the goalie. And he definitely didn't. He actually likes how hurling has been sanitized somewhat compared to how it was lawless in the 70s and the 80s. But Jesus, if someone comes down to centre your defence, you have to just stand your ground. You can't. It can't all open up like the Red Sea. You have to deter lads from coming back down there again. And it just didn't look like Kilruane did that. And by the time they had their problem solved, the game was long over.
Yeah, absolutely was. I mean, and they do have the hurlers, like they've great hurlers. But
that's the real frustrating thing. That's the most. If they didn't have the talent, it'd be understandable. But they do have loads of talent.
Yeah, I mean, Cian Darcy was quite good in this game, and I'd been a little bit critical of him in some of the other club games before this because he wasn't showing up enough in those matches, but he was quite good here, scored a couple of brilliant points. Like, he has all the hurling of a county player. Whether he'll get back to that level is another thing. We saw him in the league last year. Jerome Cahill, he opted away from county last year. Didn't quite see enough of him either. But, like, pardon me, he's, again, one of these players that has the talent that can run up the centre of the defence. But, look, they just didn't get on enough ball in this game. They weren't great. I mean, one of their subs who came on, I think it was Owen Hogan was his name, one of their star performers, he came in, he did very well. But not too many other lads for Kilruane. John McGrath, did you read out his quotes already? I nearly forget it.
No. Just obviously, we've talked about them. Frankie McGrath, who's his uncle, I think, is manager of the footballers and the hurlers again this year. And we obviously said it, and most people said it, that, you know, they played so many games last year, and it's hard to keep going week on week. And that's probably one of the main reasons that him and Noel in particular were jaded for Tipperary. But he just kind of, maybe, I don't know if he debunked that, but he definitely gave a different opinion on it. He just said, people talk about us playing lots of games, but it's great playing every weekend. If you're not playing, you're going to be training anyway. So the games bring you on. It definitely does a lot for the fitness levels, and you're used to the physicality and contest of it. I think that can only be good for playing both codes. But it depends on your age profile.
He has to say that, though. I mean,
Yeah,
so what
yeah.
else is he going to say? Is he going to say, I know I'm Banjax, and I don't...
It'd be fair funny if they're just real raw honesty. Like, this is a John McGrath who... with Lockmore a few years ago, I think he had a groin injury. He couldn't kick the ball at any stage. He had to hand pass every ball. Imagine you were marking him. Let him kick it. You know, he's just going to want to go into close to contact and hand pass the ball away. But if you're in your mid-20s, it's not too bad. But if you're getting towards, 30s, early 30s, you're in trouble playing both codes. Have to say as well, I was wondering the other day whether he was still going at it, but I saw that he came on near the end. Evan Sweeney is still going strong with Lockmore. Fair play to him. He scored a couple of goals in the championship game I was at last year, and he's obviously still going strong. And I think he's actually living in Limerick as well, so he's probably commuting a bit now. But that's just what lads do in club teams. There's lads coming from all sorts of parts of the country back to their home area to play.
Yeah, and John McGrath will be a big player if Tipperary are to kick on again next year. 21 scores to 19 in favour in Killarwan, says Andrew Sullivan, your buddy. I think there was a couple of goal chances for them in the second half. They may have swung momentum, but they didn't take them. And as I say, goals win games. Just a reminder, we are brought to you by orgaretro.com. If you want this Galway jersey or any of the other sweet ones they have in their selection, go to orgaretro.com and the promo code OurGame will get you 15% off. Please do subscribe to the channel. I know we always say it, but it really does help it grow. The more that subscribe on YouTube there, the more it recommends it to other people. Obviously, that's a huge thing. We want to get it above 10,000. We're just shy of 9,000 there at the moment. So half the people who watch the show don't subscribe, and there's thousands watching every week. So do help us get over that 10,000 there. And if you want the audio podcast, patreon.com/OurGame. Again, a great way to support the channel and obviously help kick it on and keep it going.
You're like a lad there, a manager or a teacher pulling his head out. Lads, will you just subscribe to the channel, please?
Yeah, it's not that hard. Please do it. Killarney beat Upperchurch, so this confirmed the quartet going into the semi-final. Probably nobody really back in Upperchurch. They'd lost by 10 points in their previous outing. They lost by 11 here. Billy Seymour scored a goal early on. And look, as I've said pretty much for the last while, I would see Killarney as the most likely to win this county title. And after watching this weekend, I think Turlough are very good, and they're my number 2 at the moment. I do think in a couple of positions they have a couple of weaknesses. I don't think they're quite as good as obviously that previous generation that won that 5 in a row. And Killarney to me are the most balanced team and don't really have too many weaknesses. They have a lot of players that are close to county level or in and out of the team, but an awful lot of lads that are right in that level of between being top class club hurlers and at that county level. So I'd just about go with them.
It's kind of what you want at club level, isn't it? It's, the two Flynns, the twins, aren't they? Billy Seymour, Sean Hayes, who made that great run for Seymour's goal. Like, it was a great finish, but it was Hayes that made the run. Like, then you have the two Gallaghers as well,
Willie
they have
Connors.
lots of, Willie Connors. They have lots of players, would say, in around the county setup, but maybe not a load of county starters. And like, that's a great sign to me for a club team. They're going to go back to their clubs and they're going to be still a level above most guys that they're playing against.
Yeah, James Quigley is on the county panel. David Sweeney is a very good centre back also. Plenty more to talk about in Tipperary, but we'll do that later in the week and next week, actually, ahead of the semi-finals. Roscommon Championship Athleague, their champions, 312 to 15 points win over Tremaine. That was a parish derby there.
Tremaine were going for their first as well, I think, weren't they? I don't think they'd won the Roscommon title before, so I read somewhere this morning anyway, but I'd say that was good crack. We talked about the staff room when, two neighbouring clubs were playing each other. I'd say that was some crack over the last couple of weeks in between Athleague and Tremaine, definitely.
Yeah, it must have been. Ballyboden and Cuala over the weekend. I mean, what a game that was. I'm actually just double checking the scoreline here. Yeah, I don't actually have it there.
Over the next for Thursday's show, Shane, you might try and get up. I'm hearing, I haven't actually seen them, but I've heard so much about Sean Brennan's saves. There was one save against Bowden, and then I believe there was a save against Bridget's that was outrageous as well. I think somebody commented back to you and said no matter how good a save was against Bowden, it couldn't have been better than the one against Bridget. So we'll have to get those clips for Thursday's show.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, so the players that stood out, I'm not actually seeing the scoreline there, but it went all the way to extra time, and Cuala just about edged out over the line by 2 points. You might check the scoreline there as I run through the game. Like Niall McMurrough was brilliant for Ballyboden. Keeney got a couple of scores early on, faded out of the game after that. David Tracy was the main man for Cuala. Anytime the Cuala aren't going all that well, you can be sure that David Tracy is the lad who keeps the show on the road. And I'd say jump all the way back to the Leinster final against Oulart in 2015, when the rest of the team was not going well at all. Tracy's the one who led the fight back, so no surprise to see him doing it again, as he did against Bridget's the last day. His free taking was on point. Niall McMurrough, I think he'd been on the frees. I'm confusing some of the games again. Paul Ryan eventually came in and he took over on some of the frees as well. But the drama here, so Cuala were ahead by a point late on, and then it was Luke McDwyer who soloed through after a burst from James Madden, the county player that people might know, and there was a hand pass on to McDwyer. He went low into the bottom corner, and I don't know how Sean Brennan got down for it, but he made an unbelievable save, because if you go 2 points up heading into injury time, it's actually very different even psychologically to 1 point. Because, the teams, you're like, okay, we'll win one ball and go forward. Whereas if it's 2 points, you're like, do we need to force a goal?
Yeah.
You end up taking, look, I mean,
you can't force a goal either. When have you seen the team really force a goal and it work? It just doesn't happen. It happens organically,
Yeah, so he made that save, but Ballyboden still equalised. So during extra time, Paul Ryan twice hit over frees that eventually took it to extra time. So I think Con had gotten a point late on, and I can't remember who else had gotten a point late on, but Paul Ryan answered with frees both times. Went into extra time then, and Bowden, they'd had a few chances for scores late on, and they kind of left it behind them to some degree, in the sense they could have gone ahead late on. And again, there's that whole mental shift of right now you're chasing the game versus we got away with an escape and we get a point. But Paddy Dunleavy, who'd come on and he'd done quite well, he'd actually, first of all, Paul Ryan had a free from midfield. It hit the post, came down and was cleared. I went up the other end, and a few moments later, Paddy Dunleavy got blocked down as he's trying to get rid of the ball by Darragh O'Connell. And Tracy, the ball was fed out to Tracy, and from the sideline, he threw it over the bar. Brilliant score. Went up the other end then. Simon Lambert had a shot from, I'd say, 50 yards out on his left-hand side, maybe peeling away. Something that he's well capable of scoring. Put that wide, went up the other end. Con wins a breaking ball, throws it over the bar, full-time whistle. But the drama was unbelievable. I don't know if I fully captured the drama that was there. But these teams know each other so well. Played the county final last year. It really was great stuff.
It was 127-28 after full time. And I kind of said it to you, like, this could be the sort of game that Cuala are just totally energized by now. And it could go on, and you could see them going on and winning Dublin. You could see them going on potentially and setting up maybe that dream Leinster final against Ballyhale, even though that's a long way. That's a lot of fantasy booking now. That's a long way down the line. But I would imagine they get a good bounce from this. Again, it's another 60 minutes for Con, and then another 20 minutes for Con, who will come on again, having not held a hurl probably for long stages of the year. So I'd imagine I would have thought whoever came through this, and particularly after extra time, would probably be the favourites to win Dublin. And the fact that it's Cuala with all that experience definitely doesn't change my mind on that. And I think they'll be hard beaten from here on in. But as we've seen with the other quarterfinals, there's and Nafina probably coming through in particular. Nafina have now earned a big result. It's fair enough. It's a result that you would have expected them to get anyway. You would have expected them to beat Jude's, but that was a game that was definitely looked like it was gone away from them, probably both in normal time and in extra time. So you'd imagine they get a nice little bounce out of that as well.
The drama in this game was unbelievable. Like, so beforehand, we've been talking about who's higher up in the pecking order in Dublin, and I was kind of making the case for Lucan to stay ahead of Nafina, because obviously you were looking at the talent in Nafina with Donald Burke there, Shane Barrett, Liam Rush has now joined it. But like, my whole point was they haven't quite done enough yet to move ahead of Lucan, who've just been thereabouts for the last decade. but it looked like the Fina were gone here. I think it was level after 56 minutes. Then Jude's went ahead. And like the drama of watching the amount of frees being butchered in normal time by Danny Sutcliffe. Now, Fiona Rin-Bryn would often have taken him over the years, but Sutcliffe was on the frees and he missed a lot of them. Now, he played well and all that kind of stuff, but I would never look at him and think free taker. Now,
striking off his left or his right?
No, off his right. And
that doesn't look natural. Yeah, it wouldn't look natural to me.
Yeah, no, well, he can score off both sides from play. I think he has no bother scoring either side. Like, I think he's quite skillful. But whatever it is about taking frees, I can't imagine he's taken that many over the years. Certainly not when I've watched Jude. It's definitely not with Dublin, even though he took one during the league this year. I think he missed the two from about 40 yards out. So when I saw this, he missed a lot. And actually, Donald Burke was flying on the frees until he wasn't. And during extra time, he started missing. So both teams were missing him. And you know yourself, the nerves when you see that sort of stuff happening. I think he missed two in a row in the first half extra time. Colin Curry took over the frees and he hit a nice few late on. But Na Fianna won by 3 points, 26-23, but they needed 7 of the last 8 scores to win. So that'll tell you that Jude's had themselves in a winning position here. So it was really great stuff.
I in my head, I'm just thinking like of all the headlines, at the end, Curry in a hurry, Curry with a flurry. Like, it's just like, it's too easy.
So that's Na Fianna, true. Na Fianna are going to play Lucan. Lucan beat Crave Kieran, and 120 to 116. Crave Kieran probably don't get too much consideration these days in terms of winning them. They're the last team in the north side of Dublin to win it in 2006. But they're a very good hurling team. They usually get the best out of what they have. 120 to 116. Paul Crummy with the goal there, and as it turns out, Cuala, funnily enough, had the hardest group. Then they got the hardest quarter-final against Ballyboden. Now that the hardest semi-final against Crokes. I don't know. Am I imagining something there?
Do you know what, Shane? I actually don't think it's any harm because there's no fear of any complacency whatsoever. I actually don't think it's any harm.
Championship, you might as well have the big teams playing against each other.
Yeah, from a Na Fianna and Lucan point of view, and maybe to a lesser extent, but that kind of reminds me of the Kilkenny semi-final with Turlough and O'Loughlin's, as in massive opportunity knocking for the two teams. Like Crokes and Cuala are considered the big, the kingpins, maybe along with Bowden. So it's a massive opportunity for the two of them. And in fairness to Paul Crummy, took his role really well. And I think Crave got a goal not long after that, but that kind of put the seal on the win for them. Crokes did what you'd expect them to do against Plunketts, really. I didn't expect it to be. I knew it was going to be 7 to 8 points probably at a minimum. Same with the SARS in the Upper Church game. It was just going to be a team that we're going to be able to keep them or keep them at arm's length or whatever. Says Na Fianna will win the lot. I'd probably be stumping for Cuala at this stage, but that's some semi-final, particularly Cuala and Crokes, is going to be an absolute belter of a semi-final.
Yeah. So Crokes beat St. Oliver Plunkett's own Rua 126 to 19 points. It was tight for a lot of the first half. Now, Crokes went 14-10 up at half time. What kind of the theme I'm seeing, so obviously Crokes came out like a house on fire the first out against Cuala, and I think it 3 goals in early on from Ronan Hayes. Started quite slowly the last day out against Bridges, 2-2 to a point behind before cruising to victory. A little bit of a slow start here considering the quality they have, and eventually won by 10 points. What I'd say about Plunkett's is and maybe they were just worn down over the course of the game, but too often players were caught planting the feet and winding up and getting blocked down. That sort of thing. There's good athleticism in that Crokes team, so they're probably going to do that to you. Alex Considine got the goal near the end, but they were well ahead. It was a great finish from him. Just going through some of the comments here. Curry runs through the defence is a good one for Colin Curry. Great save by the Cuala keeper, and some point from the sideline by Tracy, the keeper being Sean Brennan. I'm a Na Fianna man, says Will. So
from man, Will. Yeah, the Na Fianna hat on.
Lucan are a tough side. They absolutely are. I think there's going to be a puck of a ball in there. And isn't that a great game for us to see exactly who's right in terms of like the pecking order in Dublin?
It's the perfect test for Na Fianna. It is really like they're after overcoming extra time against the side that put it up to them in Jude's. Now they're going to get it against a seasoned Lucan team who what Lucan are going to deliver. You wouldn't be 100% sure what Na Fianna are going to deliver, but if they can get over the line, they'd fancy themselves in the final.
Yeah, keep the comments coming in and let us know. And as ever, don't forget to subscribe. There were some relegation battles in Kilkenny over the weekend, a couple of semi-finals there. Greg-Ballycallan, they came out on top of Erin's own Castlecomer, and Lisdowney beat the Roar. So it's looking at the Comer against the Roar in the relegation final there. But good wins for Greg-Ballycallan and Lisdowney.
Yeah, for Lisdowney, who only came up last year, it's a huge win. They had some good results. Like Dixborough only beat them a point. They drew with the Village. Aidan Tallis, who would probably know as like a Kilkenny minor goalie from a couple of years ago, he scored 3-4 and he got the hat-trick of goals in the first half. So I think they were comfortable enough against the Roar. It was 3-18 to 1-15. He's only 19, a keeper again. Like he's probably be nearly a bit wasted playing in goals for Lisdowney, so they have him out the pitch, and he believe he was very, very good when they won the intermediate last year as well. They were 3-13 to 8 points up and kind of coasted home. And then in the other one, this was the real, probably, the one to be really watching at the weekend was Greg-Ballycallan, 3-16, Erin's Own 1-18. So Erin's Own are now, one step away from falling back intermediate, having been in a senior final. What we're looking at 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I think, yeah. So like that would be a fair fall from grace for them, especially Conor Delaney, Kieran Wallace, Conor Fogarty. Like they've a lot of county representation there, and they're coming up the next day then against the Roar. You would have to say you'd fancy them against the Roar. Was it last year or the year before the Roar played Possum? I don't know if they're playing Possum. I don't think they're playing Possum this year, and they'll be absolutely fighting for their lives to stay up. But you'd have to say you'd fancy Castlecomer to stay up there.
Yeah, so Fenians beat St. Martin's and Muckalee in the intermediate quarterfinal, 120 to 216. JJ Delaney with 1-2 from full forward. He's not doing so bad, is he?
I wonder, like, how does he go about playing full forward? Are they launching ball in? Is he trying to drift in behind and catch like he would have been catching when he was playing wing back? Or, because he would have been used to being the bully in the air for so long. It'd be weird to see him out the front trying to catch a ball and somebody coming in the back of him. But he's clearly still doing it for them. Great to see that he's still going. Is he out with a county game? Since 2014, he's out with 7 years, and he's still, performing with his own club. Johnstown obviously have a massive history as well, so I'm sure he wants to stay going as long as he possibly can. St. Martin's Muckalee, obviously, they're All-Ireland club champions from back in the day too, so they would have been, John Mulhall, I believe, is still playing with them. They would have been looking to get back up, but the Fenians kind of march on, and then obviously most of the attention is going to be on Henry Shefflin in the intermediate championship. His Thomastown side had 11 points to spare over O'Loughlin Gales' B team, so it was 224 to 213, probably as you expect. And in the other quarterfinals, Glenmore, obviously Owen Murphy and Ger Aylward, we know well, they beat Danesfort 215 to 13. Richie Hogan
only went down, went down from senior.
That's the thing. Very hard. It can be very hard to get back up. That's why someone like the Roar could struggle maybe to get back up, particularly straight away if they go down, because they could get kind of stuck in that quagmire that's the intermediate championship. Very hard to get back up. Richie Hogan was injured when Danesfort beat Connolly. Not 100% sure if he played this game. But again, there's a guy, like, you're probably expecting a retirement statement over the next while, you'd imagine, just given because of the limited time he's had with Kilkenny. Absolutely amazing career. I hope he's able to stay going for another year, but I don't know if that's going to be a runner given the amount of injuries he's had in recent times. And then just the last quarter final, St. Lochtan's 219, John Locke's 19 points. St. Lochtan's obviously be Mick Kavanagh's club there. So I had the draw for the semi-finals. I had it up there a second ago. I think Henry's coming up against JJ. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. I'll just tell you now in 2 seconds.
Against Glenmore.
Sorry, I'm wrong. No, it's Henry against Owen Murphy, and it's JJ against St. Lochtan. So Fenians and Lochtans, Thomastown, Glenmore. And before, I think in the last couple of weeks, I've just been chatting to a good few people in Kilkenny. It had been Thomastown and Glenmore that they were all talking about were the big two. So again, it's an opportunity for Fenians and Lochtans. Wouldn't be great if it was JJ up against Henry in a Kilkenny intermediate final.
That's the subplot we want. So half fingers crossed, but nothing against the other two clubs in there. Sligo semi-finals, Eastleigh, the holders, they beat Cooler Strandhill 419 to 19. Nave Owen put up 624 on Calgary St. Joseph's, who scored 1-9. Obviously, tough news for Nigel Grennan. Obviously, there's a bit of a fundraiser going on there if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, Nigel Grennan, who a lot of people would know, he played for Offaly for many years, wing back and cornerback from Ballycumber. His house actually burnt down last week in Mount Temple in Westmeath. He lives there with his wife and kids, and I think there were 7 hours putting out the blaze. Thankfully, there was nobody in the house at the time. But there's a GoFundMe page which you might actually put up just on the Our Game site. Is over 90,000 raised. They want to obviously rebuild his house. It's an awful tragedy to happen to anyone. So if people just go to the GoFundMe page, it's called Grennan Family Support Fund. The generosity of the GA, particularly when people are going through tough times, really knows no bounds, and people have been great with this here. He actually played for Ballycumber yesterday. They were beaten in the Senior B semi-final by Tubber. It would have been a local derby. Ciara McManus is still playing for Tubber, to the best of my knowledge, as well. But just any support for Nigel and his family would be great, especially going through the toughest of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else before we finish up here?
No, there was an interesting one, Shane. Naas are playing the senior football semi-final in Kildare next weekend, but they're actually without a manager. I don't know the full jigs and reels of what's gone on in the background, but Paul Kelly was their manager. He resigned over the weekend. I was just reading on the Leinster Leader there. He managed Thomas Davis to the Dublin final in 2019, and he has Naas back in the semi-final. I believe they haven't they haven't won a Kildare title since, it's 31 years anyway since they've won it. But he's gone now, and I believe, just from reports in the Leinster Leader this morning, Owen Doyle, who plays for Kildare and obviously would have been Kildare captain for many years, is stepping in as interim player manager.
So I think himself and Eamon Callaghan, who's nicknamed Leper, I think they took training yesterday.
Okay. It's just a mad situation, because usually this is the sort of thing that happens when a club is going really badly, or someone's got, like, I don't know if there's a precedent for someone leaving midway through a season that looks to be going very well. So it's definitely a strange one, and it's going to be interesting to see how they get on next weekend, and if they can book a place in the county final.
Yeah, they beat Carbery, and they're up against Maynooth, I think, next weekend. ML89 says Durrow won the Senior B football in Offaly after Shane Curran resigned the day before the county final.
Don't think that's true. There was a COVID case. There was COVID cases within our COVID controversy last year. Before the county final, I still have a feeling that he was still have a feeling that he was there for the county final and may have resigned after. Remember, there was a bit of a hoo-ha with Michael Dignan at the time, and he put up some tweets on Twitter, but I still think he was there for the final. I could be wrong.
I've just looked up an article here, and it says Durrow football manager, this is from October last year, Durrow football manager Shane Curran has defended his decision not to attend the Offaly B senior final, saying that the game should not have gone ahead due to the COVID concerns affecting his club. Curran's Chargers defeated Gracefield in Sunday's decider at O'Connor Park following a turbulent few days for the club. Curran and Durrow coach Owen Mooney withdrew their involvement from the game over worries about a close contact in the squad who did not have the result of their test for COVID-19 before the final took place. The pair announced their decision on Twitter and outlined their concerns for public safety, while Offaly GA also published a statement insisting they'd followed all relevant guidelines in relation to COVID-19. So yeah,
he was still manager and did have impact on the game. He just wasn't at the game, which is probably even more peculiar.
Yeah, well, look, that's certainly that was certainly quite an odd one anyway. But
yeah.
That's
go of the week, Shane. Go of the week. We've saved the best until last.
Well, look, I mean, who's your goat of the week?
My goat of the week, it's like we've talked about different people and stuff like that, but we actually had a goat on a pitch this week, did we not?
We did. I forgot to get the image.
Good man. I think it was in the Meath Championship, the Meath Hurling Championship, because somebody tagged Mickey Burke wondering was it his goat. But there was a goat on a pitch for one of the Meath Senior Hurling Championship quarter-finals, I think, and the goat had to be ushered off the pitch, I believe. So, like, we talk about, you know, human goats or whatever, and we give, you know, we put the goat on top of someone's head, but there's the image there. You might just read out the caption, Shane, that says, I think it actually mentions who walked the goat off the pitch.
So Robert Cox at extratime_sports said, put in quotation marks, "Are you kidding me? At Blackhall Gales, senior hurling manager Paul Nestor has the unenviable task of trying to get a goat off the GA pitch in Longwood during today's Meath Senior Hurling Championship clash with Clon. Mickey Burke, is this lad yours? So, yeah, that not ideal. Certainly
Which
not
would you
ideal.
rather be trying to catch? A dog running around a pitch or a goat? Dog's not going to puck you. Dog might bite you, but the goat could puck you and you could end up in a bad way.
You might have a better chance of getting after the goat.
Yeah.
What do you
As
think?
regards human goats for the weekend, I don't think he could look much further than John McGrath. Looks like he's back.
Yeah, as James S. also agrees, and I'd have to say so myself. So that's it for the Hurling Show today. A reminder, please do subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep saying it all the time to try and get up over 10,000. The promo or patreon.com/ourgame if you want to get the audio podcast going on a walk or whatever, handier than having YouTube open all the time. Great way to support the channel.
You don't have to look at us as well.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget to support our sponsor too. If you do want to get a retro jersey, best place to get it, orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame.
Christmas is coming up. Like Orga Retro is the only play. Like it's actually the perfect Christmas presents for GA fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff, Michael. We'll chat to you again later in the week when we'll do the club power rankings.
Yeah, ready and raring for it.